dysregulated nervous system in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's just making sure that if you're going to be dysregulated, that you have tools and strategies to create an exit plan, to remove yourself or create the space to say, oh, I processed as much as I could today. Now I need to do this in a different way. Oh, I did this today. Now I need to go do that. And it's giving yourself the power to feel, and it's also giving yourself the power to know when to back off and go to the beach or talk with a friend or get a therapist involved, or it just gives you a deeper understanding of who you are and what you need right now. And then for me, one of those really hard parts is asking for what my needs are. So instead of getting stuck in these overthinking patterns, or we get dissociated, or we choose distraction, we can choose the unfamiliar, we can choose the uncomfortable, and we can better sit inside of that and give ourselves permission to not try to do it all in one day, but just recognize what's going on. And a ton of that has to do with attention.
Chris, why is it so important to have a regulated nervous system?
Regulated nervous systems in this modern world are a necessity for a lot of different reasons. I think the one most true for me right now is that in the midst of chaos and change and transitions in my own life, I thought that I would get stuck in a certain state, not like Florida or Ohio. Like I would get stuck in like depression, or I'd get stuck in anxiety. What having a regulated nervous system teaches you more than anything else is that getting stuck is just not as available. You don't really get stuck when you know that your nervous system can get regulated, that you have tools to get out. It allows you a different access point, different portal into feeling your feelings, and actually doing it. And you and I, before we hit the scary button of recording, kind of talked about that of like, you can't get out of your own way until you really start to feel your shit. And having a regulated nervous system is like choosing to go on like a river float and knowing that you can always have a string or a rope tied to the shore that you can pull yourself back to so you don't drift out to sea. So you can have the experience of having your feelings and know that you're not going to get untethered. You're not going to get completely disconnected. You're not going to get lost in it. And that shows up in a million different ways in this modern world. Overstimulation, social media scrolling, judgment, criticism, unhealthy relationships, stuck in money loops, like all of those different things are the result of this modern world. And if we don't learn about our nervous system and when it gets dysregulated or disjointed, or the parts of our identity that are activated and defensive, we end up living through fear instead of living through optimism, opportunity, love, and connection. And for anybody that's gotten stuck in fear, they know it's no way to live. So you're not actually alive. You're just surviving. You're just in that gross survival mode. And people don't change until they choose to change. People don't change when they have to change either. People choose when they are ready for it, I think. And a regulated nervous system is a necessity to do that sustainably over time.
So, part of the reason why you got into this work, something that we'll dive into a little bit later, it's a beautiful personal story that you share. But part of it was you noticed that you yourself didn't have a regulated nervous system. You knew you were very dysregulated.
Yeah.
You described it a little bit, but could you go into more detail as to what it really felt like when you were dysregulated and what that
Oh, yeah.
what that did for your life?
Yeah, without a doubt. So to give some backstory and some context to this, when I was 23, I got hit by a car, sent to the hospital. I lost my dad to suicide, and then a couple of weeks after that, found out that I was going to be a dad. And by the time I was 24, I was a single dad. Still 2 years away from finishing my doctorate, super broke, didn't know what to do, trying to figure out my feelings, but constantly just like squashing them down so that I could like take care of my daughter and try to go to class and all of those different things. And that is hell. Anybody that's that level of crisis, that level of stimulation, that level of just grieving but not knowing how. For me, it's like it was like, complex PTSD, and mixed with that was just the constant triggering and activation of my nervous system going, oh, there's a tsunami coming, like we're going to drown. And the feeling of that for most people in this modern world isn't the tsunami. Most stress, most trauma is small t trauma.
Mm.
It's the little things, it's the small sticks every day that end up breaking, and it just takes a toll over time. For me, I just felt like I was constantly treading water, constantly exhausted, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do it. And I had this pit in my stomach, and my heart would start to race. And it felt like I was just constantly on the edge of like a panic attack. And I would just break out in like sweats and I felt completely out of control, didn't know who I was. Like I was just blowing with the wind. Like one day I would be like, okay. And then the next day for 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 weeks, I like could hardly eat. I could hardly sleep. And obviously that circumstance that I was in was big. That's a
Mm.
lot of stimulation. That's a lot of things. And the dysregulation for me that kept showing up is a small thing would happen and then I would spiral. The stories would start, the overthinking would start. I'm never going to get out of this. Like, I hate myself. Like, oh, I'm just going to follow my dad's footsteps 40 years down the road. Like, everything just kept coming up, and I couldn't stop it. And I would get so lost in it. And at the same time, I didn't have time to get lost in it. I'm in this really competitive doctorate program. I have to go through boards, I have to study. I'm trying to be a healthy dad for my daughter and like make sure that she's being fed, and like, oh, do I have enough money to like get diapers this week? And like, I think for a lot of people that ends up becoming the trap of, yes, there's necessity to make sure that your kids are taken care of, but it's the, oh, I'll do this next season, I'll do this when I'm grounded, I'll do this when I get out of this transition. And tomorrow never really comes for people. It's just really a matter of like, okay, this really sucks. I'm really uncomfortable. And through all of this, I am going to choose to try to understand this. I'm going to meet this version of myself with curiosity instead of judgment. That is one of the first steps to understanding your nervous system, is instead of participating in the dysregulation, in the in the story, in the narrative, is you just start to observe it. You start, for me, journaling. I'm overwhelmed. This story keeps popping up. And the more that you start to learn about the nervous system, and we can dive into this as much as humanly possible, when you start to get curious and you start to ask questions, your brain turns on in different ways. And when your brain turns on in different ways, it takes the information of your current circumstances and it gives you different tools to process with. And that's the difference between a regulated nervous system and a dysregulated nervous system, is it can be the same circumstance. You're just giving yourself a different avenue to experience it in. Because a dysregulated nervous system in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's just making sure that if you're going to be dysregulated, that you have tools and strategies to create an exit plan, to remove yourself or create the space to say, oh, I processed as much as I could today. Now I need to do this in a different way. Oh, I did this today. Now I need to go do that. And it's giving yourself the power to feel, and it's also giving yourself the power to know when to back off and go to the beach or talk with a friend or get a therapist involved, or it just gives you a deeper understanding of who you are and what you need right now. And then for me, one of those really hard parts is asking for what my needs are and just truly acknowledging, like, okay, I just need a hug. Like, more than anything, like, I just need a freaking hug right now. And giving myself permission to ask for help too, which for myself, and this is not just about men, but I am a man. So a lot of men just struggle with that. They think that those things, those vulnerabilities are a weakness. What I would invite them to consider is that's your gateway to stronger relationships. That's your gateway to having a deeper connection with somebody. That's the gateway to uh, letting go and letting somebody else support you for a second. And dads, husbands, whatever it may be, oftentimes they take on this provider role and they never give themselves permission to be provided or nurtured. And that's a huge chunk of what I see in this modern world too. And there's a lot of interesting dynamics. But the big thing about a regulated nervous system is that it's about figuring it out for you. Um, and I can give you every tool, I can give you every study, I can give you every protocol, every SOP, and some of them will work and some of them won't. It's up to you to figure out what that is and how that shows up for you.
There are so many different directions I want to take this in.
Way,
Thank you
yeah,
for sharing
that was
all
a lot.
that,
I know that was
but
a lot.
no, in the best way. So I do want to get into some of the tools and some of the things that people might be able to take and be like, oh, turns out that was contributing to a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
But you shared this idea of overthinking and opened our eyes to the fact that actually a regulated nervous system can help you just gain clarity on what you need and allow you to just get curious about what it is that you're feeling. Because a lot of us do fall down that spiral of like clinging to those negative thought spirals and just getting really, really lost in it. And it almost sounds like what you were describing was fight or flight too. Like we're constantly
Yeah.
just moving so quickly that we never really slow down enough and regulate ourselves enough to understand what it is that we need and feel at peace with that. So, would love to know more about what is actually happening when we're overthinking in the brain.
So the default mode network is where we contribute a lot of overthinking to occur. And that part of the brain is just pattern recognition. So it's got a lot of connections to the reticular activating system. And that reticular activating system inside of the brain is just looking at patterns. It's looking at psychological patterns, social patterns, day, nighttime patterns. It's connection to the circadian biology. Like there's so many different, everything's just intermixed in there. But this default mode network in and of itself doesn't really care about finding solutions as much as it cares about preventing the problem. And that in and of itself is what overthinking is. It's re-identifying the problem, doesn't really give a crap about solutions because the goal when our brain evolved was avoidance. We don't want to address the problem because if I just avoid it, realistically that's going to solve its own problem, right? If there's a rustle in the bush, okay, my friend had a rustle in the bush and he got bit by a snake that was in there, so now I've got hypervigilance and he died. So I'm going to create this rustle in the bush fear that every time something's like making that noise, oh, that must be that. So when your brain takes in information, it doesn't care what it is. It only reflects on the patterns that it has, and it's asking the question, what does this look like? And this is a challenge for our modern world because we are taking in so much information at all times that if you are collecting information that you're not filtering, you're in for a world of hurt because it's going to create these invisible standards and expectations that you're going to try to live up to that you just cannot. And your system is constantly referencing that information. So if you are, spending a lot of time on your phone, your system takes in that information and you looks at your life and your circumstances and says, well, you don't have that, or you should have that, or you could have that. And instead of allowing you to be present and recognize what your needs are and your
Mm.
desires and your all of those things, which would be solutions to the contrast that most people experience when they're uncomfortable, it goes, oh, you should go nuclear on your life, blow it up, and go try this thing over here. Go do that, right? So instead of what's real in this present moment, it just goes avoid, redirect, avoid, redirect. And while there's certainly times and places for that, as a lot of people know, and I've been on and talked with a lot of people with relationship stuff over the past year. If I talk to like Esther Perel and Sabrina and like some of these people that are just like world renowned in that, they would say social media scrolling and unhealthy friends are contributing to just like the destruction of relationships right now and why it seems so hard in this modern world because your unhealthy friends who are just, dating horrible people are giving you information that's referencing and giving you data about what you're missing out on, or it just creates this horrible contrast. And then your brain tries to take meaning and significance from everything. So whether you're getting it from unhealthy friends, whether you're getting it from social media and it's just unfiltered information, your brain's referencing and then taking that information and saying, what does this look like? And then it's got this pool of information. And then you can see how quickly overthinking will grab ideas, make meaning, and try to take action. grab ideas, make meaning, try to create avoidance. And that's the pattern that we get stuck in. And most people just get stuck in this overthinking loop. This pattern, though, is automatic and unconscious. So it's just occurring. And instead of being like the director of your life, you end up just being an actor or a character in it. And you're just participating in these reactive patterns over and over and over again. And for a lot of folks, they end up waking up in the midst of crisis, either, in divorce, sickness, financial struggles, and then suddenly they're like, how did I get here? Like, what is going on? And again, their brain goes back into, well, let's not address the root cause. Let's just avoid the problem and try to find, a different problem to address. Let's avoid the problem. Let's avoid the problem. That's a huge issue because it never resolves anything. It doesn't resolve conflict. It doesn't resolve the pattern. It doesn't resolve unseen traumas. It just creates a new environment to re-experience the same thing over and over and over and over again. So one of those patterns that I talk about with overthinking is that the default mode network also has a lot of cool parts about it that when we put intention and effort into it, that's where imagination is. That's where we have the ability to be creative as well. Yeah, it takes some effort and yeah, it takes some focus, but if we can learn to turn that thing that ruminates on what could go wrong into what could go right, it's a very similar structure when we look at it in functional MRIs, which is looking for brain activity, or Dr. Daniel Amen, who does SPECT scans, which are looking at blood flow. We're looking at these different areas on the brain and going, oh, well, we can train these things. Plasticity is actually very real. So instead of getting stuck in these overthinking patterns, or we get dissociated, or we choose distraction, we can choose the unfamiliar, we can choose the uncomfortable, and we can better sit inside of that and give ourselves permission to not try to do it all in one day, but just recognize what's going on. And a ton of that has to do with attention. Attention is the hook for focus. So right now, people have like no attention span at all. It is that is the pandemic of our world right now, is the 7 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, the scrolling, like all that stuff. And that is diminishing people's availability to focus. And focus is what turns off the default mode network and drives information to the frontal cortex, where you can critically think about some of these things. I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory of all of this stuff, but man, social media is the perfect drug. Socially acceptable, easily and readily available, and within the palm of your hand at any time. It would be like giving an alcoholic, a fifth with a straw in it and being like, just don't drink that, right? But it's so available, and that is a huge issue. And it's a tool and it's a weapon, right? Like my inner circle of people that love, support, and nurture me, two of them are local, and the other three of them are all over the planet. So I connect with at least one of them a day, and I talk to them on the phone for 20, 30 minutes. And that portal to connect with them and have ideas, it has transformed me in the most beautiful of ways. And that thing also has the most readily accessible drug on it. So you have to be able to create those boundaries with yourself too, and really take stock and inventory.
That's super interesting about the overthinking that I never knew or considered, that it's just us ruminating on the problem over and over again in different shapes and forms.
Feels like a solution, because if this is the real trap of it, it feels like you're making progress when you overthink. But what if you really want to break those overthinking patterns? It is about recognizing and holding space for what the thing is inside that's scared. It's giving yourself permission to go, okay, what is it? What are you really? What's the thing that you're avoiding? What's the need that's not met? What's the thing that you're afraid to say? And you just get curious about those things instead of letting it just be a runaway train. And I didn't know that. And I still have to practice that as much as I possibly can. Be like, oh shit. I've been like, oh my God. I've been thinking about this thing in like not the most beneficial way possible for like sometimes days. And it's like, oh, this thing created its own ecosystem and it's not healthy for me. And this is where you start to throw your tools down. You start to connect with people. You say, hey, I can't get out of this loop. and I just need to talk about it. I just need somebody else to witness this loop and not try to change it, not try to judge it. Just can you hold space for that? And this is emotional intelligence, emotional availability. And these are the people that we deserve to have in our life of like, tell me what's going on. And a
Mm.
therapist often plays that role for us, which is amazing. I love my therapist. And it's your ability to be vulnerable, recognize that you feel broken, but you're not, and having somebody go, that's just got to be hard. And you being like, oh, yeah, that shit. Yeah, I'm not a messed up train wreck. This is just hard. And you give yourself that access point, that internal narrative, that spot to just go, oh, man, yeah, this is hard. Yeah, this is hard. Yeah, this is hard. And that's where change really happens.
Yeah, and actually facing those hard and uncomfortable feelings and overthinking. Personally, I know I experienced this. It can feel very overwhelming and consuming. And so I love that you share that it's a beautiful way to take away some of its power by connecting with someone you love and kind of like sharing your thoughts with someone else, because I think it
Yeah.
helps maybe like get you out of your own head a little bit and come back to reality, and also just like feel that connection to pull you out of that thing that feels really hard. And it sounds like from what you were describing too, that overthinking has become such a more common thing we all experience because of social media and all the information we're constantly absorbing, right? So it sounds
Yeah.
like you can go just from like one problem to then like scanning for another one and just constantly absorbing all these different things. And again, coming back to that feeling of overwhelm where we just like are maybe pulled in so many different directions and clinging to so many different things
Yeah.
that it's taking us away from tuning inwards, as you said, to like what we really need and what we're really feeling. And that's when you said it's effective to
Yeah.
shift to these tools, which I would
Yeah.
love to dive into a little bit.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Um, I think our ability to use technology as a regulation tool is great. And most people won't have the capacity to do it, which sucks. You have to choose it. And I want to say that I will beat this horse just absolutely dead. Call PETA or HIPAA, whoever we have to call for that. But um, if you're forcing yourself or people in your life to change, they will always backslide.
Mm.
It has to be a choice. You have to intentionally choose it. And if you don't, or you don't understand why you're choosing it, or it feels like you're doing it out of fear, take more time. And I'm saying this as like just a very humble man right now. Of I used to be just a bull in a china shop of action, action, action. Let's go. I'm going to buy this company and sell this company. And I run a consulting firm, and we do really well scaling companies. And I get a lot of reward for that because action is so rewarded in that field. And I've just always had a knack for business in that way. And then discovered that if I pair leadership development and scaling these companies, it does really well. I've realized over the past 5 years that oftentimes that comes at massive personal sacrifice that you give up, or some of these gentlemen that I would teach these skill sets to turned it into, I don't want to call it a weapon, but they would turn themselves into these like hyper fixated people and completely dismiss the most important aspects of life. We would dive into getting them better regulation tools in the office, only to realize that they would go home and drink.
Mm.
Or they would go home and, the biggest combination for business owners right now, and this is not me throwing shade, it's just me recognizing the pattern that I see every day. It is the Adderall alcoholic. And the Adderall alcoholic that's out there, I mean, you came from a hedge fund world like that. That is what Wall Street is built off of. Silicon Valley lives off of that. And I'm not here to shame Adderall at all. I think Adderall is a tool. If it becomes a dependency, I think that you have the availability to develop intrinsic tools. I've seen it enough times at this point, and I've seen it so many times where people build these strategies and they can get themselves off of these medications and get themselves self-aware and build these tools. And so much of it really breaks down to, all right, I've got ADHD and I am hyperfixated, but I still have to get things, and Adderall just makes the noise go away. That's okay until you haven't eaten until 5 p.m. And then you get off of work, come home, carb crash yourself, drink, half a fifth of whiskey and then you're borderline drunk around your kids and your wife or your husband or your kid. Like, I see that combination so often. And this is where it's like, all right, you have to choose to change. You can't do it because everything's going bad. You have to do it because I choose it. And then I cannot iterate that enough because it's uncomfortable. And if you're forced into discomfort, you're going to resent it. If you choose the discomfort, it's so different. I went to a sauna and ice bath with a friend last night, and invitations are what are necessary during those times because the sauna feels good. The ice bath feels different. So it was an invitation back and forth of like, let's go in the ice bath. And then it's an acceptance of that invitation by their choice, not by I'm doing it. And you have to just learn how to play in that psychological dynamic, which I know is kind of into the weeds a little bit, but important nonetheless, I think.
Absolutely, because you're highlighting the fact that like you can learn all of these quote tools that you want, right? But the first step is really wanting to change and really committing to that change, not just like pretending like you're going through the motions maybe with these things because that's not where they're going to be most effective.
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter how good the tool is or the toolbox. If you're building on a foundation of fear, you're building on quicksand. And that's why whenever I talk with people about any communities or executive coaching or anything that I do online, I am always inviting them to reflect. Is this a choice? Do you know why you're making this choice? Are you doing it out of fear? Are you doing it out of loss, abandonment? And if you are, those things are not bad. It's just recognizing that they exist and that's something to work on, but it's not something to make a choice from. And we really got to get grounded in that. We really have to get grounded in understanding that, like, oh, I'm trying to make this choice out of this fear of, I'm trying to make this choice out of scarcity of, and oh, that's something we're going to work on in there. But I want you to make this choice because a deeper access point to understanding yourself. I want to
Mm.
understand myself. I'm curious about who I could be if I integrated those parts. I'm curious about how true life could show up for me if I chose those parts. And what you start to see when people make these choices is skepticism goes away. And when that skepticism goes away, opportunity takes hold. And that's where you watch people just glow up and they stop giving a shit what other people think. They stop giving a fuck that they're, taking themselves out on solo dates. They stop, caring that they're reading books instead of scrolling. They just it's a shedding all the things that didn't make sense that are culturally acceptable of, let's go get blackout drunk on a Thursday because it's Thursday for, kids in their 20s. Suddenly it's like, well, that's probably not what I want right now. I'm going to choose something differently. I'm going to go to coffee shops at 6 a.m. instead. And what you realize during that period of time is the social regulation standard is different for people that are coffee shops at 6 a.m. You meet your people at those places instead of the people you meet at bars or the people you meet in different areas. They just probably don't hold that standard in the same way.
Mm.
And you co-regulate with them. And these are the people that you're like, well, who are the people that are at the gym at 6? And this is obviously not for everyone, but it tunes you in a different way. At least that's what I've realized.
Yeah. And before we get to some of these tools that you find
Yeah.
are most effective, I would love to circle back to what are the biggest things that you notice in the work that you do that are contributing to dysregulation? I know we dove into
Oof.
social media as a big
Yeah.
one, but what are maybe just like the 5 red flags that you're noticing as a pattern?
5 red flags. Okay. The first one is unhealthy relationships. Um, Relationships, and I'm saying relationships, not just romantic. I'm saying relationships in all contexts.
Mm.
They have to be, at least for me, reciprocal. Both people have to be putting effort into the relationship over time because there's seasons of life that with my friends, my closest friends, right? They need me for 6 months straight, or I need them for 6 months straight. And we are always checking in with healthy communication and saying, hey, that thing didn't work really well, and this thing did.
Mm.
And oh, hey, I know that you're going through this right now. Can we talk with you for 30 minutes, and then I have some stuff that I want to unpack too. And if we don't get to it today, can we find time tomorrow? That's a huge thing. So just recognizing relationships and the people in your life Do they have the things that you want? Are they healthy? Are they happy? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they self caring? Or is it maybe time to create some distance and space of like, oh, do you want to go out on Saturday night? It's like, I don't know if I do anymore. And just recognizing that and taking stock and inventory. And it doesn't mean that you just blow up your friend group. It just means, I don't want to call it maturing. It's looking to your future. Do I want to be this person when I'm 40? Like I said, I'm 31 right now. And I ask myself right now, like the people that I'm hanging out with, like if these relationships continue, I'm just going to be so fulfilled and happy with the people in my life. So great. I'm going to keep nurturing those things because they're nurturing me too. And with the people that are not, or that like I just look or connect with and it feels not right or feels like it's transactional, just respectfully, they go in a different category of people that I connect with. So relationships is huge. Two, overstimulation. The dual stimulation, the overstimulation, the disconnection from nature is a issue. So in our house, these rules have changed. And they've changed in a really healthy way. So my daughter's homeschooled. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is movie night. And on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we would typically take our TV out of my closet and we would bring it into the living room. We just leave the TV out now, but we're not participating in TV. And my daughter doesn't have an iPad. She's got like people are listening to this. I've got a library in my house, and like half the books are hers. Because as soon as she started to read, because she didn't have that overstimulation and like the quick apps when she was young and like all the stuff that goes along with that. When she was in public school, she crushed it, just like top 1% of everything. And like, I'm for sure bragging about her because she's my daughter and she's the greatest thing on the face of the planet. And I love her so much. And Phoenix, if you're ever listening to this, like 30 years later, I still love you so much. And I'm like, oh, I want to intentionally nurture this in a way that's just going to make you the truest, most beautiful version of yourself. And that means teaching you to recognize how addicting stress is. And that's what stimulation is. It is genuinely addicting because anticipation is addiction, right? And this is why toxic relationships oftentimes are so stimulating, because they're super high highs and super low lows, and the slot machine effect of inconsistency creates the anticipation of like what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, and your brain releases 2 times the amount of dopamine in anticipation to what could be than it does getting the reward. So everybody thinks that dopamine is this reward mechanism, but it's not. It is an anticipation, and if you can train that, you have unwavering inspiration. Which is why I can crush a podcast today and have only drank hot chocolate this morning and don't need coffee as much. And because I have learned to associate hard dopamine and anticipation with creativity and imagination and long, stretchy timelines instead of immediate gratification. And overstimulation is the immediate gratification over and over and over and over and over, right? It's just the constant like buzz of that thing. And we don't know that it's just wrecking our dopaminergic system. We don't know that it's completely unmotivating us. So that overstimulation is a huge problem. Number 3, that's dysregulating us, is we are sedentary, really sedentary. And this is one of the foundations of self-regulation, is like physical regulation, sleep, diet, exercise, habit formation. We need to get out. We need to sweat. We need to lift heavy things. We need to go for walks on the beach. Like we need to swim. We need to move our bodies. And we're just not doing that. And we have to go do that. Movement, bodily movement is just as effective as many antidepressants that are out there. Number 4, I would imagine, is just going to be poor circadian biology. This gets back to artificial living. Like I'm in a house, I got a really nice house, and I love it. It's all great, but I've got big white light over there, so the camera looks good. But during the nighttime, I have red lights all over the place that are just keeping my brain aware of what time of day it is. Because we know the circadian biology, which is your brain's ability to know what time of day it is and what chemicals to release during that time of day, is super important. And if you are casting different light and color at certain times of day, it's creating access confusion in your system. And that oftentimes contributes to craving certain things in anticipation of carbohydrates or the need for carbohydrates instead of protein, and um, or not putting healthy fats in our bodies. And then I think the last one is just speed. It's just pace. Everything, we move things so fast. We're trying to go so fast. Everything has to go, 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 go. And this summer, I've been practicing slow, low stimulation life. I am living British television, basically. And this is something that me and my daughter do together is we make and have tea every afternoon, and we sketch and we color and we look at the birds, or we look at the clouds, or we live on water down here in Florida, and we've got a big open scape and we can watch thunderstorms in the distance, and we just sit, we drink our tea, we talk and we connect and talk about why the grass makes our legs itchy. And it's slow. It's learning to be present instead of learning to expect or be ready for what's next. So I think
Mm.
those are probably the top five things that I see.
Yeah, I resonated with every single one of those. And unfortunately, I feel like our society's moving quicker and quicker, and it's not providing that environment for us to really slow down. Like it takes a really intentional reminder to do so. And it feels uncomfortable because a lot of us are used to moving so quickly. I told you before the call, I just moved from New York City, and I think a reason that I was unhappy there is because I was moving so quickly and
Yeah.
I was constantly stimulated and I was not surrounded by nature.
Yeah.
And I do value all of those things. And I've realized it's taking some unlearning to start to regulate
Oh yeah.
again.
80% is unlearning.
So I know that there's going to be different tools that are for different people, right?
Yeah.
It's very personal, but I'm curious as we wrap up here on your personal journey, what have been those shifts that have been the most powerful for you in your
Uh,
regulation journey?
Sleep, exercise, and communication, hands down. So there's four, well, five categories of regulation. There's physical, mental, emotional, social, and like purpose and meaning. And I used to think that they were kind of like on like a pyramid, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I don't know if that's true anymore. I think that if you don't have the foundation down, like you have to build on the foundation of healthy physical habits. It's so hard to be cognitively, emotionally available, emotionally present, and mentally sharp with poor sleep and nutritional habits. And, that stuff is brutal. But by far, the thing that has given me the opportunity to do some of this deep emotional work on myself, um,
Mm.
exercise and social connections. And that's one of my biggest values. So my two biggest values are playfulness and connection. Those two things. And having those things in my life and figuring out what those things were for me, like let me be childlike more often, and also scale companies to $100 million, and do those things in the same day, multiple times a day. And that's where I would tell most people to learn to slow down and self care, build a morning routine, build a nighttime routine. Like, and I get it, kids are hard. Husband and wife teams, sometimes they just don't align. I get it. Still, if you don't start today, tomorrow never comes. So you really want to be able to put the foundation of, yeah, I'm ready for change. I'm going to choose this change, and I'm choosing it because I'm so curious. I'm so inspired of who I could be if I got these things, if I got myself out of my way. Who could I be?
Mm.
I'm so, so curious about that. It just completely changes how you show up to life in the most profound way. So I think that that would probably be the sauce of it for me. And then once you do that, then you start working on the mental and emotional skills. And that stuff, that's gross. That's low stimulation. And then the communication aspect of it is massive. Like you have to recalibrate and upgrade the way that you communicate with yourself and other people. And a huge part of that is self worth and enoughness, and working on that of like, I want to communicate this thing, but I feel like if I ask for these needs, then they won't love me, or they'll leave me, or I'm asking for too much, or, well, they're already overstimulated. And it's like, with the right people, you can ask for their needs and they will say, I can't give that to you right now. Let's find a time to recommunicate with that. For this modern world, that's the bare minimum is, here's my needs. I'm being really vulnerable and sharing that with you. and them reciprocating and saying, I get that. I had a really long day. Here's what I have available to connect with you for and with. And I hear that need. Can we find time for that Saturday morning? Can we find time for that Friday night? And really giving yourself permission to sit in that too.
I love that you're sharing so much about communication and relationships because that's something that I know I never really associated with a regulated nervous system, but I do think it is a really, really important thing in all of our lives. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that this conversation hasn't been like, don't drink coffee and don't like XYZ and this is the diet you should have. And it's all these things that we might not consider. Although actually now that I bring it up, what are your thoughts on coffee?
I love coffee. Coffee's great. I am a coffee, I don't want to say like fanatic, but for me, coffee's turned into a meditation. So I have most days I have 1 cup of coffee. It's really rare that I'll do 2 caffeinated drinks, really rare nowadays. But there was a period of time that I was doing 2. But yeah, I have an espresso machine. I AeroPress. Like I really enjoy a good cup of coffee. And I think that for a lot of folks, it's been like, oh, it's gonna make your body just cortisol, and cortisol is so bad. And it's like, all right, calm down. Like, throw some heavy cream in that thing, and like go outside and drink your coffee, and you're gonna be fine. Put some healthy fats in it. Put some coconut oil in it. Blend it up. Like you're gonna be fine. I think for women, I think more than ever, what I recognize is women need more protein and more fat than they're getting, and they need probably more. And this is just like a research thing. This is not me like telling women what to do. Women need more like weight room to put more muscle density on their frame. And I'm not saying like let's get just shredded, but I'm saying like 2 or 3 days of weight room for them to increase muscle density is going to protect your skeletal system. And your skeletal system is so deeply connected to your redox potential, which is your cellular health, which has a direct connection to your ability to regulate at a metabolic level and a chemical level, that I see a lot of people in their 20s and 30s look really healthy, and then they start to get into their even 35, 40s, 50s, and they just deteriorate. And it's because they don't have this fundamental, they don't have, weight room once or twice a day. They don't have walks, like really adding load to your skeletal system, especially for women, is super important. And it's super important for men too. We just have a different cellular makeup, so we can hold muscle in different ways, and it's harder for us to lose that. So anyways, coffee's fine. You can drink black coffee on an empty stomach. It might work for you. For me, I used to really love black coffee. This season of my life, if I'm doing coffee, I'm either getting a cappuccino or I'm doing black coffee and I'm putting like heavy cream in it because my body really likes dense fats.
Mm.
And that's what I've learned about myself, but everyone's different.
Well, that's great news because after our conversation, I'm going to go pour a cup of coffee and I'll follow that guideline. But Chris, this has been super, super interesting and informative. And I'm really grateful you took the time. So thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to press follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. And it would mean the world to me if you left a comment and rating on the show to really help my efforts in growing fulfilled. And I'll see you all again soon on your journeys to living this life fully.